All right, we're going to go ahead and get started.
It's crazy that Phoenix.
All right, so today, just to go over a couple things for everyone that's on the call that's not here in person. I did mute you, so if you need to speak, please unmute yourself. But just so we can cut down on the feedback noise, and then for everyone here as well, if we just keep the side conversations down because they pick up very well. I have moved myself to be closer to the mics. Hopefully that will help, but just keep that in mind, please. Before we get started, in the email I sent out this week, I sent out a link to a video that the USGA put together about their annual meeting. After I sent that, I realized that it was also on the front page of the USGA's website. So if you're not on Facebook, you can go to the USGA's website here, and it's at least currently right now it's right on the front page. You just click watch here, and then it'll play. But it was an interesting discussion. I'm sure a few of you probably listen. I know Craig said that he fell asleep watching it. It was so exciting. So, but they did talk about some things, not all rules related, but a couple things that were rules related that I kind of picked out from it. Originally, or at least from what I heard from Mark Wilson, was that it was just going to be one major change from the draft rules, and they mentioned a few. So there's probably 2 or 3 more out there that we don't really know about. Whether they're major or not is different, but it'll be interesting to see what they actually come out with in March. Kind of, maybe they're just saying that to drum up some excitement. Who knows? But and then the other thing that they talked about was they have this vision for having a rule certification beyond what they have now, and it's kind of similar to what the RNA has currently. So if you go to the RNA website, they have like different levels that you can get certified, and it's all online. And so one of the things that the guy mentioned in the talk was that, how, what did he say? He said, how nice would it be that if a high school golf coach could go and tell his or her team that, go online, take this, and in order to play, you need to be level 1 certified. I mean, that's what he said. But so there's going to be some kind of online digital education process that the USGA is working on with this, which obviously we'll use in addition to these sessions. But hopefully they'll be able to create something that we can share with our players as well and help them understand, because it's going to be very interesting come those first couple events when people are still dropping like this or whatever. But anyways,
they can still drop like that.
They can.
Prohibits them from doing
they can, but they'll probably be playing from the wrong place a lot of times if they do it.
Mm-hmm.
Depends if it goes 20 inches.
Sure, or whatever it ends up being, right?
Right.
So, all right. So we're going to talk about Rule 20 today for the most part, and before we get started, I'm going to start with a video. I'm not going to look at it in the PowerPoint because then we'll have to wait 5 minutes for it to load up. But this video, and we showed it last year as well, but this is like probably one of my favorite rules video because the guy does such a good job, but it covers so many different rules, and a lot of what we're talking about today, dropping, and then what we'll talk about next week, nearest point of relief, nearest point of complete relief, nearest point of relief, and then taking relief from abnormal ground conditions and or immovable obstructions. So we'll play this here. I think I've got the sound set up.
It's not going to be like, as you see this here, there's one speed from the catch of water, which, right, it's looking right here. Jordan, I got to ask you a couple questions. The catch of water wasn't here, and ball was just sitting here on the cart path. What would you do? What would you do? Would you play this direction? If the ball is sitting on the cart path, right, there's no water here, you still got a shot. No. Okay, I understand. You're going to play. You're going to be playing this direction. Yeah. That's all I need to know. Okay. Yes, sir. So basically what we need to do is take our club that we would be playing that direction, and let's see where we fit here. Marshall, 170. You good? this side. And again, your toes couldn't touch, so, you know, you would almost sit here, when you get your feet on that side, or would you look in there? I was sitting on water. Okay. So really, the nearest point to me is right here. It's going to be here. And we've got a line on this. Right. We're going to go that way. And technically speaking, this is separate. Correct. You know, they are connected. So this is where the nearest point. Get out there. Yeah, and it's still steep water visible. So I'm going to go right here. And I can measure the driver that way. Yeah, and we'll see. We don't really want to. We know what it's doing. Yeah, I just don't know if we're going to be able to fit our stances. You understand what I mean? Yes. I can drop it here. That original stance, swing direction, like we would play, that original position we apply here. So all the position here, where our stance still be that tunnel, and I have a feeling it would. Yes. So, if it's a floodlight, then you need, right, if any direction, you can go backwards. If I'm right here, right, and then well, is your, okay, yeah, we can go there, right? So, yeah, stay right there. Okay. So if I go here, and I say I drop it, maybe. You can. That would be the issue. Okay. So what I try. All right. We're going to have to drop it very near that tee. Yeah. And again, the question is, would we be standing on the cart that was in that puddle right from here? Well, I'm not sure. It doesn't look like I'm in that puddle right there. Okay. With that original stance. Okay. That's technically but certainly we would, yeah, it went to a position where we'd have interference again. Correct. So we're going to redraw. Yes. Yeah, that was the best drop I've ever done. And again, once you let go, what happens? That's good. So yeah, you can remove the tee. And the question, the problem is, yeah, we had only like it's close. You can't really manipulate your. Yeah, no, I get it. I'm not trying to. I'm just trying to. I mean, yeah. The problem is that's still in it. I think you're still in it. All right. So we're going to go further back. We're going to have to go further back, but we're still working really. Yeah. We didn't drop it in a correct position. Yeah, I agree. Now, you know, I think if you have a club like here, you know, where you get your feet going, maybe over there on the railroad tie. My name's on right here. Yeah, but yeah, right there. That's kind of that reason. I think yeah, I get it. I just don't matter. Okay. I think we're good. And now I can still take car path. If you want to take car path, what would be your going to be going versus there? So this ball is again, just make sure you have complete release before you strike this ball with this ball right here.
Everybody put the cell phones away. Cell phones away, please. Back to player.
Yeah, I think Right. So redrop, yes. So we have this is still the first drop. We haven't really. We got to see what that bubble is there. So yes, so there. Yeah, I think we're beyond the close.
That's not beyond the falls, and that's still in kind of water.
The front like this. Yeah, it's really here. No, but this land outside the water. Okay, it's not land inside. It has to land. Yes. But we're in the way. You can let it down here. Okay, that would be a redrop. I'm trying to drop that.
This is why they're gonna hold it for that. Yeah.
So right in here is where we're looking to drop it.
I think that's within a club length. I think you have. Okay, so let's sit here. That's it. Right there. Let's see first name. Because of these branches. So what they're saying is we think we got a different direction of flight. Because it's further on this side, this is over there.
I could drop it in here and
Continue this. Just set up the original, just what the original direction of flight, the one here. The original direction of flight, which has been for the whole right. Correct. Is that clear? Yes. So technically, I think we've got away from the original stand swing direction of flight. Now, since the tree is very here, we have to start the ball to the right of the flagstick. Now, just because our foot is a little bit into there, I think we can satisfy the rule because we've taken relief from the short and the down tonight. So I think you're okay with this. Okay. Okay. I'm okay with this. We're good. Thanks. Thank you. Yes, all right.
Working all through the switcher skis. They're already on the clock, a hole behind. Give us a quick summary of what just transpired there.
Taking relief from the casual water on the cart path, that was the concern. And if he was going to take relief from the cart path, then he would have to go further left. So the relief that he took was from the casual water. As we said earlier, you must take full relief from casual water, and that's why it was such an intricate drop that if that left toe was touching the water, then it wasn't full relief. So that's why there was the concern about that left foot where it was positioned. Even though it wasn't directly in the water, if the toe was just tapping the water, that was not full relief. So he had to make sure that he took full relief from the casual water.
All right, so he is finally ready to play his second shot. Catch up here with BK. Other two players have already played. We'll show you those.
Bubba's on the green now at the ninth. They have moved on. It's complicated. You got to green after all of that. And then it's too much.
Rolls up and over the green.
If that's up against the fence, he's going to need another draw.
So it's a long video for sure, but there's a lot of good things in there. I think one positive thing that we can all take away is that in 2019 we don't have to deal with any of that crap. And I'm sure everyone on that rules modernization committee was just watching that and just thinking, man, we did the right thing here. So
You're gonna drop it right there.
yeah, exactly, and we won't have to worry about redrops and all this stuff. But
still, when he took his stance, his foot was still in the water.
So what the official said, Brad Gregory, he said that because his original direction of play, he didn't have interference. he was okay, and at that point he could change his stance. So it'd be the same thing if you were taking relief from the cart path, and if the cart path wasn't there, you would hit the shot straight away. But then after you drop, you have to turn sideways and punch out. And if there was something else in your way or cart path, you would get relief from that as well.
Or you could say, I don't want relief from it.
Sure,
Right,
exactly.
okay. So he didn't take relief. Okay.
Yeah, so you're just taking relief from that original a condition, and then with that direction of play, you can always change your direction of play after you take relief. All right, switch over here.
Hello.
Hey, Dan. Wake up.
Some of them should have their cameras muted. Is that?
Yeah, it's always funny to hear that kid 10 minutes later.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So we'll cover a lot of what was in that video in terms of when we need to redrop, when we need to place after dropping, when it's I don't know if you use the word technically no drop, but there was a couple times where Jordan really didn't drop the ball because it was it landed outside the area that it should have, and so that's technically a no drop, at least the way that I kind of call it is a no drop, so it doesn't count in those first drop, second drop, and then place. But we'll go over that here shortly when it pops up on the screen and everything. Hopefully.
Got it.
All right. So 2020, Rule 20. So we'll start with 20-1, lifting and marking. So a ball may be lifted by 3 people: the player, his partner, or another person authorized by the player. So one common example that you'll see that people often don't get right, and I know when I was growing up, I did this all the time, and I never got a penalty for it. I should have got a penalty for it, but a lot of times you'll have people that might get behind, like Jordan Spieth. He might have hit his ball in the green there, and there could have been 2, his playing competitors could have been there, and they said, I'm going to mark it because it's in my way. Well, they actually have to ask Jordan if it's okay if he marks it, and then Jordan has to give them permission to mark it. They can't just go up there and mark it, even for pace of play purposes. So that's something that I know I did all the time when I was a kid. But yeah, so it has to be authorized by the player if another person is lifting the ball or marking it for him.
If you do it, there's no penalty to anyone, is there, in stroke play? Because you're an outside agency as to him.
That's correct, I think. There's no
Okay.
penalty for a stroke play.
There's no
Okay.
penalty in stroke.
Match play,
Match play would be a stroke penalty.
one stroke penalty. Okay. So I guess I wasn't breaking any rules because I didn't play match play. So
At least you were that day.
The
There we go.
penalties to the person that matched, that marked it, not
Correct.
the person.
Correct.
Right, yeah.
Correct.
So
Not
if you're-
a flag.
Well, if you're raking the trap and,
Question for you, Kyle.
Yeah.
One tournament I did, Michigan Am, it was a par 3. To speed up play, we're letting them hit up onto the green.
Right.
But they had us as officials mark the ball.
Mm-hmm.
That's
That's
legal?
yeah. That's okay. That's a great example because I mean that definitely happens. And as long as the committee is doing it or the committee is approving it, it's fine. So even if we were to tell the players to mark their balls, that would be okay because we're giving them permission to do it.
How formal does the authorization have to be? Can you do thumbs up or go ahead or
Yeah, I mean,
is there
I would say you just kind of yell
guideline
back,
for
hey, hey, Lynn, can I mark this for you? Or
Okay,
I'm
if
gonna
I
mark
mark
this,
there be some
okay?
kind of
Yeah,
information.
something like that. Just he just says wave his hand or whatever.
Okay.
Yeah,
No, but you're still better.
still better asking.
You're still in stroke play. You're still better off asking.
right?
And I always
Getting
do.
a
I always say,
verbal.
hey, Len, okay if I mark this?
Right.
Help speed up play or whatever.
Right.
Yeah. I've seen that. Yeah, not a header. Guy turns around in anger or something like that. And
Right.
did he authorize that to happen or not?
Yeah.
Anyhow.
No, that's a good question. And then this statement here says the player is responsible for any breach of the rules. So we saw this a couple weeks ago with that tournament down in, I forget where it was, Puerto Rico or something like that, where the caddy grabbed the ball out of the hazard before the player gave him permission, and the player got a penalty. And then I'm sure some of you guys saw the video that
That's
the
a
caddy
few
put out.
$1,000. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it was like $16,000, and the caddy got fired for it.
And afterwards, the guy says, "You gave me permission."
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And there was a decision about.
There was a decision about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But then I heard after the fact that the caddy pulled it, and then the player said, "Well, I guess I'm not playing it now." Or at least that's what came out after the fact. So I think ultimately the right ruling was made, but it seems like, I don't know. I don't want to get into it. If you're refereeing by the book, it was the right ruling.
Yeah.
So we'll stick to it at that, right? Right, Craig?
Right.
Please.
Yeah. So the position of the ball must be marked before it's lifted for a rule that requires it to be replaced. So that's important. So anytime that you have to put it back, you have to mark it. So you saw like Jordan Spieth in his video, when he lifted the ball from the casual water, he didn't mark it because he knew he wasn't going to put it back there. But if you lift the ball from the putting green, you're going to put it back, or if you lift it because you're going to check if it's unfit for play or something like that.
Wood for somebody.
Yeah, exactly. You're going to put it back, so you have to mark it. And then if it's not marked, the player incurs a one-stroke penalty and the ball must be replaced. And then if it's not replaced, there'll be a two-stroke penalty there from playing from the wrong spot. All right, now this here says if the ball or the ball marker is accidentally moved in the process of lifting the ball under a rule or marking its position, the ball or marker must be replaced. There is no penalty provided that it was directly attributable to the specific act of marking the position or lifting the ball. So what does that directly attributable mean? So in the decision here, 20-1/15, it says that, so what is meant by the phrase directly attributable? So in Rule 20-1, the phrase means the specific act of placing a ball marker behind the ball, placing a club to the side of the ball, or lifting the ball such that the player's hand, the placement of the ball marker or the club, or the lifting of the ball causes the ball or the ball marker to move. And in Rule whatever, it says that the phrase means the specific act of placing or replacing a ball in front of a ball marker, placing a club to the side of the ball marker, etc. So it's in that moment. So
we're using 95% again.
Always, yes. But no. So I think this one is probably more like 100%. But we also know that there's a local rule that kind of gets us around with this on the putting green. Now that only applies to the putting green, not everywhere else. So we know that even on the putting green, if someone goes down and they're going to mark their ball and they drop a coin above, and it hits the ball and moves it on the putting green, that's not a penalty. If they were doing the same thing in the fairway or something like that, that would be a penalty. Because that is one of the situations that's not directly attributable. Whereas if they put the coin down and as they were, or the coin was down, they put the ball back, and then as they were lifting up the coin, the ball moved. That's a different story. That's directly attributable. But again, in the fairway or anywhere else other than a putting green, that would still be, it wouldn't be an issue, because it's directly attributable. And on the putting green, it's a non-issue. All right. Of course, we have our exceptions. So if the player incurs a penalty for failing to act in accordance with Rule 5-3 or 12-2, so that's searching or looking to see if the ball is unfit for play, there's no additional penalty under Rule 20-1. So they're not going to get a additional one-stroke penalty if they fail to tell their fellow competitor or other people in their group that they're lifting the ball to identify it. They'll just get the one-stroke penalty. And then here is another important thing: that the position of the ball to be lifted should be marked by placing a ball marker, a small coin, or other similar object immediately behind the ball. If the ball marker interferes with the play or stance or stroke of a player, it should be placed one or more club lengths to the side, or club heads, or
clubs,
or club lengths. Yes, whatever helps get them away from interfering with play. So there's a decision here that basically covers what is actually recommended. So what's in this rule is just a recommendation of best practice, it says here, but there is no penalty for not doing it that way. So if you used here, it says you use a toe of the club, which we've asked about before. They can use a tee. They can use a loose impediment. You can scratch a line, provided that the putting green isn't tested. However, you can't reference the position to an existing mark on the ground. So if there was a green splotch mark or something like that, you couldn't say, well, my ball is right there. So you'd have to actually scrape the putting green, or put a
2 feet closer.
Yeah, exactly. Put a leaf or something. I don't know, but there's lots of ways that you can mark it. Obviously, it's recommended to use a coin, and it just from an etiquette standpoint, a lot of those other things, especially tees, just kind of get in the way, and it just causes more time for you to have to move that out of the way. So I usually try to carry a few pennies with me at junior events, because I know that a good chunk of the kids are just going to be marking the ball with the green or with the tee, or not marking it at all. So I don't want to give them a quarter. I'm not that generous. But.
Is any of that changing in the new rules? How you mark the ball?
I think you can't use a loose impediment in 2019.
Okay. Did you hear that?
Yep.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
Oh, and then one other thing I have in my notes here. One trick that I heard actually from Ken Venturi. So when he marked his ball, whenever he moved his coin, he flipped it over to tails or whatever. So he always knew that if his marker was tails, he had to move it back. So that's something that is something good to say to players. Or when we're out there officiating, if we see a player move their mark out of the way, make sure that they get it back. And if we start to see them put it back, we need to say something to stop them from getting a penalty. Because if they don't put it back, it's going to be a 2-stroke penalty. All right, dropping and redropping. So the ball must be dropped by the player. So only one person can drop the ball. And so no caddy, no authorized person, only the player. Not even the partner. It has to be the player. So, and then as we all know, you stand erect, arm shoulder length out, and then you drop it. You can't put any spin or anything on it, whatever. If you don't drop it correctly, under Rule 20-6, which is the eraser rule, which we'll talk about in a little bit more detail, you can fix that mistake and then drop it again without getting a penalty. However, if you play it and don't fix that mistake by dropping it incorrectly, then you're going to get a 1-stroke penalty. So this is a first situation that I would call a no drop. So this is when your player drops it and it hits either themselves or part of their equipment. So it could be a golf bag or a golf club that's laid down for measuring, or their foot. Anytime that happens, they need to drop again, and that doesn't count as one of their drops. So that's what I term a no drop, because it really wasn't proper. As it says here, there's no limit to the number of times the ball must be redropped in these circumstances. However, there's an exception that you can't influence the movement of the ball intentionally. So if you knew your ball was going in a bad situation, you kind of stuck your foot out there and hit it. That's a different story. All right, so where to drop? When a ball is to be dropped as near as possible to a specific spot, it must be dropped not nearer the hole than the specific spot, which, if it is not precisely known to the player, must be estimated. Okay, so when a ball is dropped, it first must strike a part of the course where the applicable rule requires it to be dropped. So in that Jordan Spieth video, the one time he dropped it, it landed outside of the one club length that he had for his relief. And so since it landed outside that one club length, it first hit the ground outside there. He had to redrop. So this example here might be a little hard to see, but they have a kind of a pie shaped chart there, and that's the area that he has for his one club length when he's taking relief from the cart path there. So when he's dropping it, it needs to hit inside that pie, and we'll learn, which you guys know, that when it hits in there, it can roll outside of it. It first has to hit inside there. If it doesn't hit inside there, then that is again a no drop, and we keep doing that over and over again until we get inside. All right, let's quick question for the group here. Now, let's say that this was the drop zone, and they didn't make a full circle. They just did that. If the ball were to drop right here and roll outside the drop zone, is that okay for a drop zone, or?
Yeah. So the two club lengths, right?
Sure.
From where it struck the ground.
Yep.
No near the hole.
Correct.
Wait, no. Is that a drop zone?
That's a drop zone.
If it hits in and comes to rest outside, you play it from there, don't you?
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
What do you say?
Right. Yeah.
So it's got two club lengths.
Well, it can roll up to two
club
club
lengths
lengths
from where it
strikes.
struck the ground.
That's it. So if it was on a hill and it rolled.
If it goes more than two, then you got to redrop.
Right.
So you're gonna have to measure it if you think it's.
Sure. Definitely. What would happen if it hit the line? First place it hits the line. Okay.
The line is part of the,
Yeah.
part of the drop.
Line is part of
It's all the way up.
line is part of the drop area. All right, so we're gonna go through all these now. The good news about this is that this was the last year we'll have to ever learn all this crap. This is confusing. Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah. So, I'm making the assumption that we've learned it in the past. Maybe that's not true, but anyway, so a ball must be redropped, and this is different. A redrop is going to count as one of our drops before we play. So if it rolls into and comes to rest in a hazard, so if you drop the ball and it stays in the hazard, or hits outside the hazard and goes into the hazard, you're going to redrop. If it rolls out of and comes to rest outside of a hazard, so if you're dropping in a bunker, let's say, and the ball somehow hits in the bunker and then rolls out, we're going to redrop because we're going from one part of the golf course to the other. And then same thing for out of bounds. If it hits in bounds and rolls out of bounds, we're going to redrop, and that one makes sense. And then also rolls onto and comes to rest on a putting green. So if the ball were to hit on the fringe, rolls in the putting green, you need to redrop. Now, there are a couple situations where you can drop on the putting green. However, in that case, the ball would need to hit on the putting green and stay on the putting green in order for it to be legal.
Sure. Feel like relief from water hazard?
Yeah.
The ball lands on the putting green and rolls off. I think
Is that okay?
I think that ball's still in play. As long as it doesn't.
It's just the opposite.
Pardon me?
It's if it hit the fringe and rolls on, it's not good.
Yeah.
But if it hits the green and rolls off, it's okay.
I think in the case of relief from water hazard, yeah. Now,
You could deliver, yeah, go ahead.
these will still be in effect next year. You just will have minimal number of occurrence of these happening because of players taking advantage of a lower drop height, I would assume. But
Sure.
aren't these still going to be, those will still be in effect, I would imagine, right?
I would imagine, yes.
And depending on the length. Is it going to be 20 inches? Is it going to be 80 inches?
Right, yeah.
That's kind of the unknown factor.
I think it's
Correct, yes. Well, you can.
See, this is saying it rolls into the hazard. Like under unplayable ball, you can choose to deliberately drop your ball into the water.
Correct.
And then if you want relief, you have to take it under the water hazard rule, because that's where the ball is.
So that only talks about rolling onto the putting green, doesn't talk about rolling off the putting green.
Right. Okay. So the distinction there, from my understanding, is that if it's so that rolls onto means that it can hit on the green, but still roll off and be okay.
Yeah, it is the fringe that rolls on.
But it can't roll onto it. Right. So if you're taking two club lengths from a lateral water hazard,
That's the only time you drop on the green.
Well, could it be because it wouldn't be a tree overhanging the green.
I think
It might be relief from
yeah,
obstruction
I
possibly.
think, well,
I mean,
no, I don't think so though, because if
don't
the
think
obstruction
we ever
was
dropped
was
it.
off the putting green, you would
You're
have
right,
to, and if the obstruction was on the putting green, you would place it, right? What's-
yeah, I know for sure relief from water hazard. If you get two club
Right.
heads onto the green, that's okay.
And you drop on the green?
If two club heads get you out of the green, yeah, you can drop on the
Okay.
green.
That's about the only time you drop on it.
Yeah,
Well, I would just think if you were in a tree and overhung
Yeah.
the green, your point of relief, and you're declaring it unplayable.
if you're
Your
up
point
there.
of relief
Is
is
directly
directly
below.
underneath
Yeah.
it, and that would be another place we could have, right?
I would think you're right, yeah.
I think I would think so, yeah. Because you don't have a place on the course, so you,
So you got to drop.
yeah. Let me see if it's
But if you're on a tree, now, if you're in a tree, think about it, your point of relief is directly down from that tree, right?
Right.
So if that,
They're saying the tree's hanging over the green.
oh, so the ball's over on the top of the green.
Right.
Yeah.
And the tree is not in an abnormal ground condition, in which case it would count as being in the abnormal ground
Right.
condition.
yeah. There's no in Rule 28 ball and playable. There's no mention of place, so I think you would drop in that case. And then Craig, getting back to your point, I think you're right that these things will still be in the rules. However, the frequency of them coming up will be a lot less. I mean, there might be some where, I'm just looking through these. I guess, I know that they're changing. Well, I guess that would still be the case even with the embedded ball rule, because I think they're changing that one a little bit, but. If it still ended up going back in the pitch mark, you would still redrop. So
But these 7 things are pretty important to remember and memorize because
right.
it'll help you a lot determining whether or not a player is taking proper drop.
I screwed up last year. Not a good guess.
Yeah.
And I still don't understand. You have normal ground condition. When you drop, you have to take complete relief. In other words, your stance cannot be touching it. A competitor hits it in a hazard. He takes his relief. He's allowed to stand on the hazard, drop the ball this far outside the hazard, and play it without relief from the stance. What?
A different rule.
Well, I know it's
Water
different.
hazard rule is a different rule than
To me,
the
you should
abnormal
have
ground
to take
condition.
relief from both of them. You take relief.
The nearest point of relief only applies to immovable obstruction and abnormal ground condition.
If you're
If it's
getting,
a water hazard, then you have to proceed under 26, the water hazard rule.
if you're
And there is
getting
no
relief, there's no penalty
requirement
involved,
of the
right?
water hazard.
Right.
There's no relief.
You don't have
If
to
you're
take
getting relief, there's no penalty involved.
Just take relief.
Correct.
If you're in the hazard, then there's a penalty involved. So that's that's why it's a different rule. You can put it outside the hazard, but you can still stand inside to hit it.
Sure. I mean, you can make the argument though that, and I think it was Mike is maybe trying to make, is that you would think if you're getting a penalty, you would get relief from standing
Oh,
in the hazard. And I don't know.
Had a pretty big tournament when
Right.
Sorrentino's
the
still mad at you.
competitor, yeah, Sorrentino says, I'm going to stand right here because there was a tree
Right.
50 yards up, and he was going to try to. So I said, I'm sorry, sir, you have to stand, or you're not getting full relief, so he only moved that far. But
Right.
Still.
Sure.
And then he made a par.
Otherwise, it would have been your fault.
Yeah, and then I found out I gave him the wrong move. So
Okay.
he was real good about it.
Sure.
Telling myself dumb shit.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where you don't even think about it when you're out.
No, exactly. Yeah. No, and
But they're right. Most players think the opposite.
Yeah.
Most players think that if their stance is still within the hazard, they're entitled to a
Complete
redrop, and that's not the
Right.
case.
No.
Which is why when you're marking the course, you typically mark the hazard at the top of a bank.
Right. Where the natural decline is.
Right.
So on number 2 there,
Mm-hmm.
my ball's embedded outside of the hazard,
Mm-hmm.
right? I'm going to take my relief.
Right.
I drop, and it rolls into the hazard.
Redrop.
Redrop.
Yeah. So one, I think one example that kind of helps me understand this rule is I imagine the hole, it's whatever, let's call it par 4, and on the left side you have a bunker that's maybe the size of this table from end to end, and then to the left of that you have a little patch of like two feet of grass, and then to the left of that is a lateral water hazard. And so that's kind of how I understand this rule. So if I hit the ball in the lateral water hazard, I blow it way left. I can take my 2 club lengths from there, and if I drop the ball and it hits on the grass, it has to stay on the grass. It can't roll back into the hazard. It can't roll back into the bunker. And likewise, if I wanted to go straight to the bunker, if my 2 club length got me there, which it would if it was only this much grass, I could drop straight in the bunker if I wanted to. But I have to stay in one spot. I can't go from one to another.
And if you drop, you can stand in the hazard to hit it.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And so that's something too that I'll usually share with the player. Maybe not all that stuff, but I'll tell him or her just to let you know, if you drop it here, you're not going to get relief from that hazard when you're standing. So that they know that if they're trying to drop it really close to the red line, on that second one, before they do it, I'm going to say, that if your ball drops, if it hits and goes back in the hazard, you're going to place it where it hits, and you're going to have to play it, and you don't get relief from standing from the lateral water hazard. Just to give them a heads up, because players are often confused as to how that works, and they may think that they're going to get relief after the fact, when they're actually not. All right, number 5 here. So rolls 2 and comes to rest in a position where there was interference by the condition from which relief was taken. So this is our complete relief. So under a relief from removal obstruction, normal ground conditions, or additionally a wrong putting green is also a part where nearest point of relief comes into effect, or a local rule, or ball rolls back into a pitch mark from which it was lifted under Rule 25-2. So all those situations you would redrop. So if you drop the ball and it goes back on the cart path, if their stance ends up on the cart path, you would redrop. And we saw that in that Jordan Spieth video numerous times. Rule 6, rolls and comes to rest more than 2 club lengths from where it first struck a part of the course, which Dan talked about earlier. So they get that 2 club lengths from exactly where it hit. So in theory, a player taking relief from the water hazard, lateral water hazard, 2 club lengths, could get almost 4 club lengths of relief if they were smart and they used the contours correctly. So there are a few situations where knowing the rules could actually help you. Not many, but a few. So. All right. Let's see. So then also rolls and comes to rest nearer the hole than its original position or estimated position, or the nearest point of relief for maximum available relief, or the point where the original ball last crossed the margin of the water hazard or lateral water hazard. So I think this is something that's also extremely confusing to players, in that they're always taught, and I think a lot of us are taught, that anytime the ball bounces forward, that you have to redrop. That's not always the case. So just to have a picture example, this lady here, she's smart. She's taking her relief from her yellow water hazard, coming back in a line with the flag and dropping it in the fairway in a flat area instead of on a downslope. If her ball hit there and rolls forward 1 club length, she's good to play. If it rolls forward 3 club lengths, then she's got to redrop. But as long as it stays within 2 club lengths when it hits, as long as it doesn't go closer to the point where she crossed that yellow line, or last crossed that yellow line, then she's okay. So I think a lot of people think that anytime it rolls forward, and you get the same thing with the lateral water hazard. You could angle your 2 club lengths out, and they could bounce forward this far, and a lot of people just go down and pick up the ball because it's closer to the hole. But it's really in reference to that point where they cross the lateral water hazard margin.
What was your reference about the 3 club lengths? In that case there, if she's taking the line of the flag, or whatever we're calling it these days, and and she's dropping it and it rolls forward 3 club lengths, but still on that line, does she have to redrop?
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
more
So
than two.
yeah. So if it hits the ground and rolls more than 2 club lengths from that point, it's a redrop.
No matter what.
Exactly. Yep.
Yep. Okay.
Forwards, backwards, left, right, always.
That's where I had a discussion with Mark Wilson about that.
Yeah.
Because let's say if you cross there, where she's at, you went way back, you got the bonnet roll, 3 club lengths. I thought it still should be in play because it's that close to the hole. I want to cross over.
Right.
And I just couldn't get it. He had that a little longer.
More than 2, yeah.
And so he took off his coat and he's right now.
Hey, Kyle.
Yeah.
In that example you gave of, it starting to roll forward, somebody mistakenly think they can grab it. They grab it before it has rolled the 2 club lengths, so it's still okay, but it's in motion. Where do you go from there?
Yeah, there's a decision. Let me see if I can find it. But basically, what it says is that if it was completely impractical for it to come in a to rest in a place that would be within the 2 club lengths, the player's okay. But if it doesn't, then there's going to be a penalty. So let me see if I can find it really quick.
But
20
doesn't it say it has to get all the way out of the area where it could have been in play? So entirely more than 2 club lengths before you grab it.
Let me see here.
I think it was one about the caddy grabbing it as it's going into a hazard kind of thing.
That's the one.
Yeah.
Probably where you get the
Once across the line is okay.
because you can't stop it before it goes into a hazard.
What's that?
Yeah.
2C/4.
2C/4. Okay.
What's that?
20-2C/4, page 333. Let's see.
It's 2 strokes and you play it from where it stopped.
Yeah, 2 strokes or lost a hole.
Right.
So you would place the ball then.
No, it says it's two strokes. You must play it from where it was stopped.
But if it's in the person's hand.
I think there's another decision.
If the ball was lifted at the time it was stopped, the ball must be replaced where it was stopped. And there's no additional penalty. You've already gotten the 2.
The caddy gets a penalty because he's got to hold the ball while the guy's hitting it.
And by replaced, we think that is placed, not dropped, correct?
If it were
place or replace is not dropping.
Correct.
It
Yes.
would be replaced because the ball
Right.
had a spot on the course, and that's where you're going to put it again.
Yep, exactly. But if it says place or replace, it's not.
It says the ball must be replaced
Just
where
by
it was
definition.
stopped with no additional penalty.
The replace can mean either dropped or placed. If you know the spot, if the spot is known, you can place it, but if the spot is not known,
You have to drop
you got to drop it.
Right.
And if the ball was in motion, would we consider that knowing the spot or not knowing the spot?
It's the spot where it hit.
It'd be the spot where
Yes.
it was stopped or picked up.
Well, right there, the sentence says, if the ball was lifted at the time, it was stopped. So he stopped, the caddy stopped the ball and lifted it. Says the ball must be replaced where it was stopped.
Or the caddy stopped the ball. Yeah.
Well,
That's what it says.
okay. So what happens though? I swear there's a decision in here somewhere, or maybe I'm just remembering things that aren't true. But let's say that the caddy is sitting with his or her feet in the water hazard, ready to catch the ball that goes in there, and his hands are outside the water hazard, and the ball is clearly going to go in the water hazard, but he touches it outside. Is that a penalty?
I believe it would be.
Yeah, according to this,
It's not, I don't know.
Depends on where the
It's
mark
your
is.
homework assignment, find that
Okay.
decision.
I swear it's in
So
here
across
somewhere.
the hazard.
Yeah, if it crosses the line of the hazard, then it's not.
Then it requires a redrop, so there's no penalty.
Yes.
But if he's doing that, the ball's got to
What
go
if
more than
what if there was
2
something in the
club lengths to
hazard
get
that could
to
have kicked
the
it back?
problem.
I mean, what if there was a rock there that could hit the rock and came back and play? No, I'm serious though.
Wasn't there a
I'm
minor cut where it was on a slope and the guy caught it?
I don't.
Yeah, I've seen the caddies do that.
Yeah. I know in there somewhere. Maybe it's in the rule and it's not in the
Well,
decision.
there's a related decision up here. Let's take a look. 1-2 5.5.
Right. That's a very influential.
Yeah, exactly.
One dash 2 5.5 doesn't help all that much.
No. Just purposely stops or deflects it.
Anyways, I'll
yeah, because it
I'll
ball
look
lies
later
through the green.
and see. I swear I recall reading something, but it's probably not. It's probably somewhere else in maybe 24 or 25 or 26. So. But no, that's a great question, Tony. All right, so here as we were saying, so if the ball, when redrop, rolls into any position listed above, it must be placed as near as possible. So this is saying after it's been redropped. So we've got the first drop, the second drop, we try it again, and then after that second drop, if it continues to go into one of those places that we just talked about, one of those 7 places, or 7 situations, it's really 10, but then you would place it. So drop place is a common thing, but again, that's when they're actual drops. Those no drops that we talked about don't count in that thing. So if I dropped and it rolled 3 club lengths, that's 1 drop. If I drop and hits my foot, that's not a drop. And I drop again, and then after that, if it rolled back into the hazard, then I would place. And where I place is where it first struck a part of the course. So I know Jim was saying earlier, if you have your walkie-talkie, would be a good practice to kind of get as close to the ground as you can, and as soon as you see it hit, kind of put the end of your walkie-talkie at the spot so that the player knows where it hit. Because the player is always going to pick the best spot possible where you know the exact spot where it hit.
I got a small question.
Sure.
I watched the lady drop in there, but the line of flight relief from the flagstick stick back.
Mm-hmm.
It's not line of flight.
I know what you mean. Flag, yeah.
Line of play.
Line of play or flag line or
no, from the flagstick.
From the flagstick.
Flag line.
Flag line.
Yeah, she's dropping that. Now, I find this a lot when I'm trying to line the guy up, and they just casually like this. Why wouldn't she turn this way and make her drop? Wouldn't that be a better position to be in? I mean, how critical is it?
I mean,
it's supposed to be on a direct line.
Right.
You're supposed to drop it on the line.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
she is.
Well, maybe she is, but when you
Depends on her reference point. That's where the ball went in the water.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's looking at the crack in the.
I mean, I guess you're not.
You're within 2 or 3 feet. Basically.
I probably have a different viewpoint in this. I mean, honestly, if it's close enough,
right,
just play on it,
Just
right?
hit the ball.
Just exactly drop it and go. I mean, it would be it would be different. I mean, let's say that here, it's either fairway or it's fairway,
right,
but it could be something where it's fairway or bunker. In that case, then we do want to make sure it's on that right line because that could give the player a huge advantage. Now, in this case, whether she drops it, right on the exact line or 2 inches off of it, it's still in the fairway.
13 tall. Tiger Woods, he just kind of casually went back.
Well, that one was he kind of mixed up his relief.
Yeah, he went back to
That
the
was-
original
that was
place and hit it,
Frank
and then
Murray
he dropped it
last
2
year.
yards behind it.
He
That
thought
was
that he
50.
could go back on a line from where he originally played from. Whereas when you go back to where he last played from, you have to pick that exact spot or as near as possible.
Near as possible. So So he was
So he kind of mixed up his options there.
But the committee in charge was the Masters.
Right.
No, seriously.
Yeah, it was
But they have a separate set of
rules.
Fred
Right.
Ridley fell on his
They have their
sword.
rules when they need to.
I thought the situation was that he dropped it 2 yards behind it because he didn't want to hit the flag again. And he knew
He
the
wanted more
same
of a
shot
line.
would get it where he wanted to be.
What his
so.
statement was, I backed up 2 steps to get a better shot.
Right.
Right.
That's what he said to the
Yeah.
news media that night.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And that's,
And I mean, ultimately, the committee did the right thing and kept him around for the weekend and helped
So the viewing
help grow the
audience-
game of golf. Whereas, why DQ the most important game over 2 feet?
Right.
Even though he was trying to gain an advantage.
I thought he did
I
get a
guess
penalty out of
I
that.
guess for someone's skill
It
level
wasn't
like
DQ.
Tiger,
Oh, what-
that's probably a pretty big advantage. Whereas everyone here at the table here, that's not really going to make that big of a difference. We're not dialing our wedges down to the yard. At least I'm not. And I shouldn't speak to everyone here, but so.
Kansas in inches.
Yeah.
So this here just talks about the drop zone. We really kind of already talked about this, but the player doesn't have to stand within the drop zone. The drop ball must first strike a part of the course within the dropping zone, which also includes the line. And then the ball does not have to come to rest within the dropping zone. And then all those provisions that we talked about before in terms of rolling onto a putting green, rolling into a hazard, those still apply. However, the nearer to the hole things do not apply in this case because the drop zone is set up as an additional option in those cases. So usually when we put a drop zone out there, the whole purpose of it is to provide that additional option because the relief that's available to them under the rules of golf is abnormally unfair or unfair. So you might have a situation where you have part of the golf course marked yellow hazard, and there literally might not be anywhere they can go back on the line with the flag and drop. And so their only option is to go back to where they last played from. Alternatively, you could have a hazard around the green, circle around the green, and completely circle it. But you could hit it in a place where you last crossed and then going back with the flag, or taking 2 club lengths, the only option, and those options aren't available. So your only option would be go back to where you last hit it from. So in those cases, there's typically a drop zone put in place. And that could be for a lateral water hazard, a water hazard. It could be for ground under repair, a lot of different things that you can use a drop zone for. In the, one thing that's true about drop zones is that in theory it could result in the easier shot for the player. It doesn't necessarily have to be the same type of shot, but it could result in an easier shot for the player. Or as Jordan Spieth found out, it's always good to go. It's always probably smarter on number 12 to go back to where he last played from instead of using the drop zone there. All right, placing and replacing. So 2 people can place the ball. It's either the player or the partner. And then a ball that is to be replaced can be replaced by 3 people, either the player, his partner, or the person who lifted the ball in the first place. So the ball must be placed in the spot from which it was lifted or moved. If the ball is placed or replaced by any other person and the error is not corrected, as provided in Rule 20-6, the player incurs a 1-stroke penalty. Makes sense. Okay, and then here, if the ball is to be replaced is placed other than on the spot from which it was lifted or moved and the error is not corrected, the player incurs the general penalty, which is 2 strokes in stroke play and a loss of hole in match play. So basically, they'd be essentially playing from the wrong place if they didn't put it back in the right place. All right. So lie of the ball to be placed or replaced is altered. So if that's in the case, except in a hazard, the ball must be placed in the nearest lie most similar to the original lie that is not more than 1 club length from the original lie, not near the hole and not in a hazard. Now, in a water hazard, the ball must be placed with those same restrictions that are placed above. However, it must stay within the water hazard. And then the same thing, or differently in a bunker, which is completely different, is that in a bunker you are going to recreate the lie as best you can. And then you place the ball in that lie. So a lot of times what you'll see, a common example is when a ball is plugged into the bunker and you can't see it, and you remove sand so that you can find it. When you find it, you put all that sand back, but you can leave a little piece of the ball to be visible for that player to hit. So that's probably the most common example that you'll see when a lie has been altered out there on the golf course, at least based on my experience out there. And as Craig was saying earlier here, if we can't determine the exact spot, or we don't know where the exact spot was, then we're going to proceed under a different rule, which is going to say if we don't know where it is, we're going to drop it and not place it. And here's our exception here. We might not know where that ball is when we're looking for it in the sand, but in that case, we're not going to drop it. We're going to place it. So if the spot is not determinable, it's impossible to determine the spot where the ball must be placed or replaced, through the green the ball must be dropped as near as possible to the place where it lay, but not in a hazard around the putting green. In a hazard, the ball must be dropped. However, it needs to stay in that hazard. And on the putting green, you're going to actually place the ball, even if you're not sure exactly where it is. And then the one exception, I know someone down at this end of the table was talking about it earlier, I believe. But when play is resumed after either a delay, a weather delay, or got called for the night, even if we don't know where the spot was, where the player's ball was, they are allowed to place in that case. So anytime after a weather delay or we resume play, we're always able to place the ball.
It's the player or his caddy, right?
Placing can be the player, the caddy, or if it was lifted by someone else, could be a partner.
I don't know, not the caddy, I don't believe. Caddy?
If the player or partner or authorized. So if the player authorized the caddy, then it would be all right.
Replacing it.
Right?
Picks the ball up and replace it.
If you've authorized the caddy to pick it up, the caddy must replace it then, right?
Let's see. Okay, so a ball must be replaced. I guess a restart. I think JW, maybe you were talking about this earlier. I think technically a restart is it place or replace? I guess. I mean,
it's placed. Yeah, if it's being replaced, then
it's being replaced if they lifted it, right?
Right. So on a restart, it would be placing it.
Yes.
So if that's the case, then it's just the two people that can do it, the player or his partner.
Right.
Yep.
That's what makes sense.
So the ball was there. He did put a mark down.
Yeah.
I picked it up because it was authorized to, and I put it back.
Because I put down replace and he said, oh, place.
He's like that.
No.
No. All right, so this situation here talks about if the ball fails to come to rest in the spot where you're trying to place it. So we've all had this happen where we can't get it to stop. So what you're going to do is you're just going to move it around a little bit until you find a place where it does stop. So except in hazard, it must be placed at the nearest spot where it can be placed at rest that is not near the hole and not in a hazard. In a hazard, same thing applies. It just needs to stay inside the hazard. And if a ball when placed comes to rest on the spot in which it is placed and it subsequently moves, there is no penalty and the ball must be played as it lies, unless the provisions of any other rule apply. So if you cause the ball to move or the player's caddy caused the ball to move, then that player would be penalized and they'd have to put the ball back there. But if it just moved because of natural reasons or forces, that player would play the ball from where it came to lie or came to rest after it. So usually when you're moving it around, you want to give it a decent count to make sure that it's staying in place. So I'll usually give it like a 5-second count or something like that, just to make sure that it's not going to move. Because the last thing you want to do is have the player place it, and then when they're moving up, it moves. So you just want to make sure it stays. And then if I'm with a player, I'm going to give him for about 5 seconds to make sure that ball doesn't move before I say, okay, you're good to go. All right, and for all these rules, 20-1, 20-2, and 20-3, it's a 2-stroke penalty in stroke play, and then in match play, loss of hole. Now, one thing here, if a player makes a stroke at a ball substituted under one of these rules, when such substitution is not permitted, he incurs a general penalty for the breach of that rule, but there is no additional penalty under that rule. So this is just saying that it will just be that one 2-stroke penalty there. If the player drops the ball in an improper manner and plays from a wrong place, or if the ball has been put into play by a person not permitted by the rules and then played from a wrong place, see note 3 to rule 20-7C, which we turn to that. Says that here it's basically this 2 + 1 = 2 principle, or the quote-unquote quantity discount.
Right.
So if a player incurs a penalty for making a stroke from the wrong place, there is no additional penalty for substituting a ball when not permitted, dropping a ball when the rules require it to be placed, or placing a ball when the rules require it to be dropped. For C, dropping a ball in an improper manner. Or D, ball being put into play by a person not permitted to do so under the rules. All right, 20-4. So when ball drop, placed, or replaced is in play. So I'm sure I know pretty much everyone knows this, but as soon as that ball leaves your hand, that ball is in play. So if you're placing on the green, as soon as you stop touching it, it's in play. When you're dropping it, as soon as it leaves your hands, that ball is in play. And then here's another note that or when you're putting the ball back and there's a marker there, the ball that has been replaced is in play whether or not the ball marker has been moved. So you'll see that quite frequently on the putting green. The player will put the ball down, they'll leave their mark there. That ball is in play even if they didn't pick up their mark.
Probably the second most made mistake right after line of flight relief.
Or misunderstood.
Sure, right, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Doesn't mean you can't take it out of play again by looking
right,
at it.
exactly.
It's a marked ball.
Yeah. If it's if the coin's sitting there, you can
means
always
it's
pick it
in
up.
play.
Exactly.
But yeah, guys think that as long as it's marked, if it moves, I can move it
I just
back.
put it back, but that's
Definition, please.
Hey, Kyle?
Yeah.
So I've seen people, put the ball down, step away with the mark left in place, step away, check their alignment on the line on the ball, and then adjust it. If that ball's in play, when did it become back out of play so they could touch it and adjust it?
Well, since the mark is down there still, they're still able to do that because they have the position marked. So as long as they put it back in play, put it back where it was. If they rotated it, but if as long as the ball is back where it was, it's okay.
The rule allows you to touch your ball on the putting green if you properly mark it. So he's still or she is still within the confines of the rule by touching it because it's marked.
Yeah.
If they took the mark away and tried to adjust the line, then you're in a penalty situation.
Right. Yeah. So basically, I think what this rule is trying to cover is that situation where the marker's there and the ball moves because wind comes up or gravity or something like that. In that case, they're going to play it from where it lies, not from where the mark is.
But wouldn't them lifting it and placing it, couldn't that be considered, causing it to move?
Yeah, but
But it's position.
they have the right to do that because the ball has been marked.
And he hasn't lifted his mark.
And he hasn't removed his mark. So until he removes his mark, that the ball is still marked. As Tom
Marks,
said.
but
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
position of the course.
Right.
It's still maintained.
Are they allowed to turn and mark with the ball gone?
The marker gun.
Yeah, see, like they put the marker down to take the ball up, then they turn the marker to line it.
I mean, as long as it doesn't move, right? I
You know,
mean,
they're turning it. I mean, it's,
They're turning the marker, you mean?
yeah, like they have little arrows on it.
The ball's down.
But they
The
lift the
ball's
ball, and then they move the mark.
Ball's up, and you just want to move the marker.
You just turn it a little bit.
I don't know.
Well, I think that's the same thing as moving the ball with the mark not
That's
there.
what I thought.
That's not a good idea to do that.
No.
I would not, I would give someone a warning. I think the first time I saw it, I don't think it was.
I mean, yeah, if they wanted to do it because they were superstitious and they wanted, George Washington's head to be facing a certain way or whatever, but if they moved it up or moved it to a different place,
They just turn.
rotated it.
There are some ball markers that are designed with an arrow on it or an indicator, an arrow indicator. And so, I use that ball marker as the, here's where I think that line,
Then you need to
start line is or
put
something
that
like that.
start line.
So you
line
can't
and
really
marker
move
for
that
the
marker. That's
Like
is that
moving
what
the
you're
ball,
saying?
really.
Yeah, that's like moving the
You can't
ball.
move your mark. You can't move your ball without the marker down. You see players moving their ball around. They can do that as long as the mark's down, but if that mark's gone, they can't be rotating their ball around.
Okay, so now what you really should do is you should put the ball back
Right.
if you want to move or realign the marker. You should have the ball and the marker there and relocate the ball if you want, or relocate the
Marker.
the marker if you want that to be your indicator. And now you step back and makes sense. But I can see that would be a problem.
So to getting all your marker, that indicator is gone.
So you take your point, go one, take your point, go two, and then you said, Ken Venturi flips it over to see the tail.
Right.
Well, he's taking the marker up in his hand to flip it over.
As long as the club's there,
Well, they had to
move it
pick it up to
anyway.
move it, so
Right, you
hopefully
had to
they did
pick
that
the
way.
marker up to
Yeah.
move it anyway.
You
So
see the marker?
You might have just loved it.
Yeah, you gotta.
When's the marker come back into play?
You asked Carl. You
The
started.
marker is never.
Now we started.
I would say as long as the marker gets back in the right place, I don't know, but
That's
yeah. I also
Your
see the
best
fact
thought,
that
no.
if you move it a putter length over, you're moving the marker. So why would it be a penalty if you rotate it? But then if you pick it up and move it, why? So
Yeah,
I get
because
it's a different reason, but you're still it's the concept. If the marker gets back in the right place, why does it matter? But I know that's not how the rules are written, so I need to be careful about that.
no one said the rules made sense.
Right.
They're just the rules.
And so this one here, and this kind of gets into our the eraser rule 20-6. But basically, this here says that the substituted ball becomes the ball in play when it has been dropped or placed. However, we have the ability to correct that. So as long as we haven't played the shot, we still have the ability to correct that. But once we get the shot, play on, you don't need to fix that, unless it's a serious breach, which you could have a serious breach, which we'll cover in a little bit. All right, 20-5, making a stroke from where the previous stroke was made. So when a player elects or is required to make a stroke, his next stroke from where a previous stroke was made, he must proceed as follows. On the teeing ground, you can put the ball up anywhere there. You can tee it if you'd like, or you can drop it or do whatever. Through the green, the ball is to be dropped. And when dropped, must first strike a part of the course through the green. In hazard, the ball must be dropped. And then when dropped, must first strike a part of the course in the hazard. On the putting green, the ball must be placed. And then the penalty, if we don't do this, is, again, 2 strokes in stroke play, loss of hole, match play. And so one thing that I are always a little bit concerned about is they may go back where the last played from and they see their divot. That's oftentimes how they find where they were, if they don't remember the exact yardage. And players are always concerned about dropping the divot. Well, if you think about it, and I think Mark Wilson helped explain this to me, but
I got a note right here.
Yeah.
Mark Wilson.
Uh-huh.
The divot's in front of the ball.
Exactly.
Okay, another question then.
So if you drop behind the divot
Right.
and it goes into the divot hole, it went forward.
Closer to the hole.
Yeah,
Redraft.
my shots.
Right.
Let's say you go back to an area where everybody's been using their sand. I mean, there's.
You're not sure which divot is yours.
Well, you know what divot's yours. Are you allowed to kind of repair the area around there? I mean, it might be 6 or 7 pelts laying around there.
No.
So you have to drop.
If they're loose pelts, they're loose impediments. But
You can-
you can't do anything about
Exactly. You
repairing the divot.
Yep, exactly. You can move those loose divots out of the way, but you can't put them back in their spots. Yes.
Right.
That's improving your line.
It's improving your line.
Until after you hit
Right.
your shot, then you can repair.
Under 13, you're not able to
And you have to
put those
drop
divots back.
within a club length or as close to the.
As near as
As
possible.
near as possible.
Even though there's 5 little
Yeah.
holes around.
Yeah.
Unless it's not fully detached. Right?
What do you-
If the divot's not fully detached, you can repair that.
Right. No. If the divots,
Yeah, but if you fold it over and it's still attached to the grass around it, it's not a loose impediment anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
right, but you can't repair a divot before dropping.
If it's not fully detached, I think you can.
I don't think so.
I think there's a page where there's 3 of those decisions and 2 seem contradictory with the third, and I've never been able to remember how it all works out. But it is
13.
behind 13 somewhere.
Yeah.
If it's got grass still attached, it's not a loose impediment, but you can't run it back over and put it back in the hole. What was that?
I think it's 13-2/0.5, 175. Maybe. Well, that's pitch mark. All right, it's 13-2/4.5. Divots replace an area in which ball is to be dropped.
What page you on?
179. So we'll see what the answer is.
Yeah, number
So-
2.55, it says removing undetached divot.
Oh, right below it?
Yeah, says no.
Yeah, it comes to rust, but folded over, but not completely detached.
You're right, you can't,
Interferes
you
with
can't,
the
can't
No, the
replace
divot
it,
is,
can't replace it.
yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So now above though it says here this kind is the one of the things it says is when the player replaced the divots, he was unaware that he would be required to drop a ball in that area. So you could in theory do it, but you'd have to know that you're not dropping in the area. So let's say for example,
Well,
the player is 150 yards and they scull it over the green and they don't know there's OB behind it and they fix a divot or whatever. And then they go over and they see their ball's out of
Because
bounds.
they're carrying for the course at that point.
Well, right, and they don't know that they have to
That they were gonna
drop
have to
there.
play
But
back,
I mean, I would say that if the player knew that they had to redrop and they did that, that would be a different scenario.
Or if you get it into a water hazard, he knew that his chances are 50%. I mean, if it was lost or out of bounds, you wouldn't know. But
Yeah, I feel like there's a decision about that one as well.
Oh, it's right there.
Yeah, everything's
Is
right
it in
there.
there?
It's right there. It's 2/4.5. And if he decides he saw the ball go over into the hazard, he plays it provisionally. He can't repair that divot
Right.
until after he hits the provisional.
Right. Okay. Yeah, so let's see. It says, however, if the player wished to play a provisional ball because he thought his original ball might be lost outside of a water hazard or out of bounds, he would be prohibited from replacing his or other divots in the area where he would be dropping the provisional. So, and Mike, in your case, there that would not be allowed.
And Jeff, there's yours right below it, about the undetached divot.
Yep.
All right, 20-6 is the eraser rule. And I think, Dan, or I think you confirmed that there is the eraser rule is still going to be in effect next year. Thank God for that.
Yeah. I forget the number already.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're taking erasers off.
What
That's
is
what
it?
the rule will be.
Yeah.
13 or 14, I want to say.
Yeah. But anyways, here, a ball that's incorrectly substituted, dropped, or placed in the wrong place or otherwise not in accordance with the rules, but not played, a key phrase there, but not played, may be lifted without penalty, and the player must then proceed correctly. So if the player, as long as the player hasn't played, they can fix it and there'll be no penalty. And in some of these cases, we'll see the player will just play on. In other cases, you have a serious breach and the player needs to go back. All right, so playing from a wrong place. So a player has played from a wrong place if he makes a stroke at his ball in play on a part of the course of the rules do not permit a stroke to be made or a ball to be dropped or placed. Additionally, when rules require a drop ball to be redropped, a moved ball to be replaced. And note, for a ball played from outside the team ground or from a wrong team ground, see a different rule that talks about that. So in that case, if we're playing from a wrong team ground in stroke play, we need to fix that. But however, match play, it's not necessarily doesn't need to be corrected. It can be recalled, but that's not a go back and fix in match play. Okay, and then if a player makes a stroke from a wrong place in match play, they lose the hole. And then in stroke play, the competitor incurs a 2-stroke penalty, and they'll play out the hole with the ball played, except when there is a serious breach. And so a serious breach, if the competitor becomes aware that he's played from the wrong place and believes that he's committed a serious breach, he needs to go back and fix his mistake. Or if this is the last hole that's being played before he leaves the putting green, so as soon as he steps in the fringe, he's done. That he needs to go back and fix that mistake. That's on the 18th hole. If it was the 7th hole, as long as he did it before he teed off on the next hole, he or she would be okay.
The 18th hole of competition, right?
Correct.
It doesn't necessarily.
Sorry, you're right. Yeah, yeah, you're right. Last hole. That's a very good point. Yep.
Before you get off the green, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So once you're on the fringe, you're done. So.
Once you stepped off the green. Yeah, whatever that hole is.
I laugh because
Is that a good one step or is that totally off the green?
I think as long as your foot is making contact with the putting green, you're okay. But as soon as and I don't know if the putting green, if the boundary extends,
yes.
Is it downward as well as upward?
Hey, Kyle.
Yeah.
And if you believe it is a serious breach, there's no implication here that you have to finish the hole with the first ball. Whenever you realize it, you then go back and start playing the second ball.
Correct. Yeah. If you know for sure, and definitely there's no need to continue to play on the second ball. If you're not sure, I think which is what this is talking about. If you're not sure, it's probably a good idea to play both balls because you may find out later that it wasn't a serious breach and that when you pick up that first ball, you're actually going to get an additional penalty for doing that.
So if you're out there, it's probably best to advise him to play both balls out.
Right. Correct.
And don't forget, you still got to report that you did.
Right. Yeah. Anytime you play 2 balls, you have to tell the committee.
Yeah. You can't think that it was fixed after you decide to pick up that other ball. You still got to notify when you played the second ball, even though you picked it up. You still got to tell them. Is that right? Yeah.
You have to tell them before you surrender your card.
Right.
Correct.
Yeah. Hey, on the 5th hole, I thought, but then I abandoned that ball because it wasn't in play. We found out. Yeah. But you still have to go through that ritual that you
with
tell them.
right with an official. And it could be in the scoring area, or it could be the next time you see an official out there on the golf course.
Okay.
Meeting notifications.
Yeah.
Yep, and so here we go. Here, this is exactly what it says. So if the competitor has played a second ball, he must report the facts to the committee before returning the scorecard. If he doesn't, he's going to be disqualified. And this also says here that if the committee determines that the competitor has committed a serious breach, the score with the second ball would count, and the competitor must add 2 penalty strokes to the score with that ball. If the competitor has committed a serious breach and failed to correct it, he would be disqualified. And so here we're going to get into what exactly is a serious breach and how they define it. And so they use these words, again, a significant advantage. So if we go to decision 26-1/11 and 26-1/21. So here's a couple of good examples. Do you have something to say, Craig?
I was just thinking, what if, so you got a player who's played in the wrong place, and he thinks it's a serious breach. So he goes back and plays from the correct spot, what he thinks is the correct spot. Doesn't he have to hold that ball out with the second ball before he has to report to the committee? What if he only scores with 1 ball and he reports to the committee that he played a second ball and picked it up, and it turns out not to be a serious breach? The player has still played the hole completely, and I mean, he's holed out with that ball, even though he corrected it to a spot where he didn't have to. That score is still going to count with that ball. He's not going to be DQ'd. We're not playing with that other, finishing that other ball, right?
Correct, yes.
Is that why he has to always report to the committee? Even though he didn't hold out that second
No, you got to
ball?
report to the committee because the committee's going to decide whether it was a significant breach.
Yeah.
Right.
But that's the committee's decision.
Then he pulls the ball out.
Right. So
But if it wasn't a serious breach and he replayed a ball anyway.
If it wasn't, then the committee's got to tell him, okay, well, you got a 2-stroke penalty from playing from the wrong place. You got another 1-stroke penalty from picking it up when you shouldn't have, and then you have to figure out, okay, how does that make sense? Is if they went back and they fixed it, well, the player picked up their ball in play. They should have played that ball. Okay, well, is this a significant breach or a serious breach of them going back and fixing it? And so there's a lot to think about there, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, you would almost the way that I would look at it is that, okay, I would give the guy a player two strokes for playing from the wrong place, and then I would give him 1 stroke for picking up the ball in play, and then I would do a stroke and distance back there, another penalty stroke, and then count those strokes. So I guess that's how I would score it. Does that make sense to you guys?
So you had 5 penalty scores? Or
4, I think.
4 max?
4, yeah. Because basically they would have to, if they pick up their ball and didn't put it back, then I guess technically that's 2-stroke penalty, but I guess you could do 1 stroke and distance and say they took an unplayable, and that's how they got back to where they were before. Because you have to justify them getting back to where they were before.
Yeah.
So how do you do that? And maybe if there were 2 shots between that, maybe you can't. I don't know. Maybe in that case they are DQ'd, but or hopefully you just
Hopefully that never happens.
yeah. Hopefully there's a maximum stroke rule and they hit it and you just give them a 10 and they go on.
Equitable stroke control.
Right. Yeah. But no, I mean it definitely could happen. I know it's happened before where I think most of the times it happens when we catch the player picking it up and then going back and we see why are they coming back from where they were, and then we tell them, well, go put it back. Because if they pick it up when they shouldn't have, if they put it back, it's just a 1-stroke penalty. Whereas if they go back and actually play from another wrong place, then it's going to be
another stroke and distance.
Yeah.
Probably stroke and distance.
Right.
20-7C/2.
John, what page is that on?
I have my app open. I don't
Oh,
know.
gotcha. Okay. 20-7- or 20-7/2.
Yes.
345.
347.
20-740.
All right, so here we go. In stroke play, A mistakenly replaced his ball in front of B's ball marker, which was near A's ball marker, and putted. The ball came to rest about 1 foot from the hole. The error was then discovered, and A lifted his ball without marking its position, placed it in front of his own ball marker, and finished the hole. What is the ruling? When A replaced his ball in front of B's ball marker and putted, he played from the wrong place and incurred a penalty of 2 strokes. The ball was in play. Rule 20-7C. When A then lifted his ball from where it lay about 1 foot from the hole without marking its position and did not replace it, he incurred the general penalty for a breach of 20-1. See second paragraph of 20-1. Thus, A incurred a total penalty of 4 strokes. So, perfect, John. That's the exact situation that we're really talking about.
One not to be in.
Yeah.
Don't touch that thing.
Leave them all alone. Mark it first.
All right, so how do we define what a serious breach is here? So we'll go through a couple examples here. In stroke play, a competitor played a stroke over a water hazard, and the ball spun back into the hazard. The competitor, in error, treated the hazard as a lateral water hazard and dropped the ball under Rule 26-1C within 2 club lengths of where it crossed the hazard margin when it spun back into the hazard. He played the ball on the green, and then his procedure was questioned. So the competitor incurred a penalty of 1 stroke under the lateral water hazard rule. Furthermore, he was guilty of a serious breach of that rule, and he must, under an additional penalty of 2 strokes, rectify this error as provided in the second paragraph of Rule 27-C. So this one is basically, it's yellow. He drops on the water side when he has to go back on the other side. That's always going to be a serious breach. And then the other example here, is in stroke play, A and B drive into a lateral water hazard. They determine where the original balls last crossed the hazard margin and elect to proceed under Rule 26-1C, taking a penalty of 1 stroke. A drops the ball slightly closer to the hole than the spot where his ball last crossed the hazard margin. B drops the ball 50 yards closer to the hole. A and B make their next strokes. What is the ruling? So A incurs an additional penalty of 2 strokes for breach of Rule 26-1C and must play out the hole with the ball dropped in the wrong place. So that A is not a serious breach. However, B is guilty of a serious breach. He incurs an additional penalty of 2 strokes, and before playing from the next team ground, he must drop another ball in accordance with any of his options under the lateral water hazard rule and play out the hole. Otherwise, he's going to be disqualified. So they say right here, they're saying they're putting a number on it. That 50 yards is what they determine to be a serious breach. So if the player gains an advantage of 50 yards or more, it's going to be a serious breach. Additionally, if it affects their play or gives them a significant advantage for their shot, it would also be a serious breach.
What if it's less than 50 yards, but let's say it's the opposite side of the water hazard, as we looked at on the
Sure.
He has to play over the hazard.
I think
go back and play over the hazard.
Right. Yeah, and I think that one would be kind of fall under the significant advantage where they actually, like before, they didn't have to cross the water, but if it was 20 yards, then there's
he didn't go forward 50 or 100 yards.
Right. Yeah. Sure. The other example that I think happened, it was last year or 2 years ago, probably 2 years ago. Maybe it was last year. But anyways, J.B. Holmes at, I forget which event. I think it was PGA National, or maybe it was Doral. I think it was Doral, actually. So it was on I forget what hole, but basically he mixed up his options. So he took the opposite margin lateral water hazard relief. But when he did that, the opposite margin, you take 2 club lengths, he went on the line back with a flag from where he crossed. And so his 2 club lengths would have left him with a slightly downhill lie, and there was a tree in his way. But when he went back 20 yards or 10 yards and dropped it back in the fairway, he was able to hit a 3-wood over the tree and onto the green. This was a par 5. And so they caught it, and he had to go back and fix his mistake because it was deemed to be a serious breach, even though he probably only dropped it, let's say, 10 yards difference.
But he dropped it further back,
but he dropped
closer to the hole.
Exactly, and he actually, in this case, he dropped it farther away. But because it gave him a clearer shot, over the tree and flat or lie, they determined that it was a significant advantage, and so it was a serious breach.
Too bad he picked the wrong referee.
That's the LPGA.
If it had been the Solheim Cup referee, he'd allow him to do that.
Oh,
Go
yeah.
back on that line, because he did to the girls in the tournament against Paula Creamer.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, that was, they enabled them to par the hole.
Oh, wow.
Because they had a better shot at the green.
Right. Oh, with the opposite margin.
20 minutes to make the decision.
It was the opposite margin, and then he let them go back as far as they wanted to instead of 2 publics. Which gave them a shot to the green, and they parred the hole and halved it.
Right. Wow.
So you need to write.
That was what it took them about an hour to figure out what they were going to do because they were down there.
Yeah.
Oh boy, for a long, long time.
Yeah, you never want to have Craig on any of those.
No,
things.
see, that's the one in the Solheim Cup where the official from the RNA
Right.
gave her relief on an opposite margin, let her take it back.
That's what Jeff said, yeah.
Yeah. Have the hole, but after the fact, the committee let it stand.
Right.
Yeah, because she had his permission to do it. He was authorized to make the rule.
Sure. Yep.
Screwed it up.
It was an oops.
Yeah. Committee error.
The 27 minutes to make the ruling.
Yeah, you think you would have got it right, called it in or something at that point. But all right, a couple notes here. So this basically is just we talked about note 3, but this is just again this quantity discount 2 + 1 or 2 + whatever equals 2. So anytime they play from the wrong place, they're not going to get penalized for. They're not going to get an additional penalty for substituting the ball, dropping the ball when it requires to be placed or replaced, and also if they dropped it in a proper manner, they'd only get the 2-stroke penalty. Or the ball was put in play by someone not permitted, they would only get the 2-stroke penalty. All right. So here are some key decisions here in terms of. Yeah, there's a lot in this one.
You sent that to us, though, right?
I will send this to you on Monday. Right. Yes.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Get your camera up.
Yeah, because I like to mark them.
Yeah, definitely a lot going on in this rule, and I think as Craig said earlier, this is something that definitely comes up a lot and good to know because you're going to encounter it. And Mike, I think I'm just like you, that I learned a lot of this by doing it incorrectly. So, that's
You only have to do it once.
hey, I mean, I don't know.
Those are the ones you remember, the mistakes you've made.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Everybody makes them.
Nick always tells me covering the ball up in the bunker. You get that wrong on the test.
So I guess I don't really have much of that else, but I do have one question, and it's obviously if anyone has any questions, I want to ask to see if you guys can get this, and I'll have to look it up to make sure I'm right on this. But so let's say that a player, and I had this happen when I was learning the rules. A player takes three club lengths, measures out 3 club lengths measures out 2 club lengths from the cart path to take relief because they thought that they I could take 2 club lengths. So they measured out 2 club lengths and put their tees down. They dropped the ball. It hit inside, or let's say it hit right at where that first tee was, marking 1 club length. Okay, they dropped it there. They play on. Penalty or no penalty?
No. Depends. Did they play the ball?
So why?
Inside. Was you inside the?
They didn't determine the nearest point of relief though before they took the club lengths, right?
Right. So
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
As long as the relief you took is a relief that could have been taken had you done it correctly, no harm, no foul.
Right.
Right. So as long as where that ball struck the ground, if that was within 1 club length of their nearest point of relief, that player is okay.
As long as it was complete relief and his feet were
Sure.
no longer on the mat.
Sure. Yep. So that was one that situation was how I learned it because I saw that happen and I tried to go over and stop them before they did it, but they already did it and they already hit it. because I was like a hole over or whatever. But it ended up being okay because that player, she or he, I forget who it was, but dropped it.
He was dropped in
a
the area
spot
they were entitled.
that was okay, even though they went about it the completely wrong
They
way.
didn't take the correct release.
Right. So.
No, they took the
They
correct
did it wrong, but they did it right.
Turned out
Yeah. Yeah. So, next week, I guess any questions about dropping or
No,
anything?
but I got two quick stories on this that I've heard about. Wasn't there, but one was a guy called this fellow competitor out for marking his ball with a marker, where you stick them in the ground.
Right.
And told him it was illegal. That was one thing. It was like, never heard of that.
Yeah.
Number two, and I just heard about this last week, happened at Crystal Downs in a match. Woman was asked to pick up her ball and mark it, or mark her ball to get it out, not on the green.
Right.
She picks up the ball, not dirty at all, right? Puts the ball back after the play, and was called by the fellow competitor for incorrectly holding the ball while marking it.
All of those are penalties if you let them.
Well, and that's what happened.
Penalties under the
And
law.
these people, they got so upset. They were in the lead. They lost the match.
Right.
But because somebody called them out, didn't know the rule.
Right.
And they went to the pro, and the pro goes, there's nothing that says how you have to hold the ball. Can't clean it
right
when you mark it.
Sure.
People pick it up, set it down. I mean, most of us pick it up and hold it like this.
Right.
There's nothing in the rules that says you have to do that. But it was two stories like that that I kind of thought
Where
were,
the guy picked up a broken tee on par 3, and his opponent called him for a penalty for using somebody else's equipment. It is if you let it, but it's not if you ask.
but I
Yeah,
thought
that-
just kind of we're on this. And I
Yeah,
just
that's
heard the story
interesting.
last week. It was kind of like,
Yeah. No, Craig and I worked a tournament a couple of years ago now, and the player from Toledo, she was in the bunker, and she had to move her ball because it was interfering with someone else's play, and she picked it up, and she put the ball in her pocket, which is, I mean, could be cleaning.
Right.
But Craig and I decided that ultimately her ball was in the bunker. We saw it. It was clean. We asked the player, was there anything on the ball? She said no, there wasn't. Given that the conditions, it was dry, there wasn't any mud or anything, and we had her put it back, no penalty. However, had she, when we asked her, had she said, yeah, there was some sand on it, or there was mud on it, in that case we would have had to penalize her for cleaning the ball. So it's not a steadfast rule that if you pick it up a certain way, it's what actually happens to it.
What if she put the ball back down, put sand on it again? Would that be okay?
No.
Only if it's a buried ball. And
She
it's
gets the-
Oh, I know it.
She picks
but
the
only if you get every grain.
sprinkles the
how many
sprinkles the pepper on the ball, right? Yeah. Pepper in your egg.
What if you had two embedded balls in the bunker that lay adjacent? And you have to pick one up to relieve the shot. Then she has to put the ball back embedded, cover it up.
Yeah,
She
recreate it.
can leave enough visible for her to see the
Whatever
ball.
you can see it.
Yeah.
Recreate the line.
Recreate the line. Yeah.
Aren't there a whole set of reading rules that we should probably print out and so we can all know what they are?
What do you think?
Yeah,
It's the
I think
shitty rule.
that's
Yes, there are. You better get it down.
Dictate them and get a recorder to type them up for you.
All right, so next week we'll cover Craig's rules. I mean, we'll go over Craig, my rule or your rules or my rules too. I just want to let you know.
We'll use your rules.
All right, so we're gonna go over next week 15, 24, and 25, or at least try to get through as much of that as possible.
I had a question for you, KW.
And with that, thanks for coming out. For those of you that drove out in the weather, thank you, and we'll see you guys
Thank you, Kyle.
and ladies next week.
Good job, Kyle.
Thank you.
Yeah,